من هنا تبدأ الحكاية، من الأرض التي لا تزال تقاوم بصوت الإنسان وبركة الذاكرة وعناد الحكاية. نبدأ من فلسطين. حوارات التعاون، فضاء فكري مفتوح يلتقي فيه مفكرون، فنانون، إعلاميون وأكاديميون من فلسطين والشتات. نحمل ذاكرتنا لنصوغ الغد، نتخطى الجغرافيا لنعيد وصل الحكاية من فلسطين إلى العالم، ومن العالم إلى فلسطين. أصوات تتلاقى، أفكار تتقاطع، ورؤى تنسج ملامح المستقبل. مرحباً بكم في حوارات التعاون.
On the waves of solidarity, voices from the Freedom Flotilla brings forward those who sailed. Activists, medics, unionists, artists, and defenders of dignity who carried hope across the sea. Their stories take us to the heart of solidarity, courageous, risky, imperfect, and deeply human. As we begin, we return to the truth that has guided us since 1983. The departure point is Palestine. It will always be Palestine.
Nahna, when we speak of Palestinian people, we speak of resilience. We speak of a resilience born from a place of love. And it's a place of love that honors Palestine, honors our cause in the face of this sinister and brutal occupation. And it's a love that refuses to be diminished. We insist on dignity, and it's a love that keeps returning to life very stubbornly. So today is the day of solidarity. And for us at Taawon and for our lovely guests that we're hosting with us today, solidarity is a verb. It's not a posture or a sentiment. It's a material lived action and extended through the hearts and souls of the allies that we have across the world. So it's things that ordinary people do together when the language of sympathy is not enough. And across the rivers and seas and over mountains and borders, we all look up at the same sky. And we are all people who respect and honor freedom. And we all find Palestine to be our compass. And when our friends sailed to Gaza, Palestine was their compass. Today, our guests remind us that this tenderness for Palestine and its courage can occupy the same breath. And care and commitment can create structures and organizations and systems and global movements. And they took risks and they built coalitions and they created new pathways in the face of this genocide, in the face of an occupation that started in 1948, and in the face of global complicity and silence. So in a few moments, I will introduce our speakers, and then we would like to step back and hear their testimonials. And we hear them with love, and we hear them quietly, and we give them space to tell us what their journey was, who they are, why did they sail. And then we will go forth with asking them questions in order for us to interrogate this experience, to look forward, and to think of solidarity as action, as structured work together.
Thank you. It's really good to be with you on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people.
If you can give us some oral history, if you can give us your testimony.
I mean, I should start off by saying I am Palestinian, so I don't feel like I'm in solidarity with myself, but this is part of my struggle. I mean, this is my struggle. My parents left Palestine when my mother was pregnant with me, and I'm the oldest of 5, and they made their way to the United States with the hopes of giving their children a chance at a life that was not available in Palestine, neither in 1948, where my father is from, or in the West Bank, where my mother is from, either like full military occupation or living as a third-class citizen under the powers of a state that really wants to get rid of you. So I was born and raised in the United States, and my parents kept that connection with Palestine. We would go when we could, and as I grew older, but even still in a young age, at 5, at 10, I would see the discrimination and the inherent, even if I did not know everything that was happening, just the inherent injustice. And that, I think, stayed with me. And when I went to college, I started asking myself, what do I who I had this opportunity to grow up not under occupation, to have a life, to go to school, to move around in freedom, and millions of my people don't. So what responsibilities do I have because of the opportunities that I had? And so after I finished college, I decided to go to Palestine, to move there and to try to contribute to, at the time, everyone was talking about a peace process. But soon after I arrived in Palestine, the second Intifada broke out, and I tried to participate. The Israelis were very violent and killing unarmed protesters. And so I looked for a way, really, my young, naive self who had not grown up there, how could I make an impact? And I ended up with a number of other people co-founding the International Solidarity Movement. And the idea behind the International Solidarity Movement was to globalize the Intifada, to call people to come to Palestine and to see what's happening with their own eyes, to counter the mainstream media, to stand side by side with Palestinians rising up for their freedom. And hopefully to provide some protective accompaniment, because Palestinians protesting alone were being savagely beaten, injured and killed in large numbers. And of course, nobody holds Israel accountable for Palestinian deaths. And so we called on people to join us, not really knowing if anyone would come, because my own parents were calling me from the United States saying, come home, because they were seeing the news and the violence on television. And my response, I'm Palestinian. I said, sorry, Mom, Dad, I am home and I'm not leaving. But would someone who's not Palestinian come deliberately walk into this? We didn't know, but we tried. This was before the age of social media. So we had to, through personal contacts, call on people to come. And we held our first campaign in 2001. 50 people came, mainly from the United States and Europe. And those 50 people, of course, after their time in Palestine, went back home and told other people, and then encouraged them to come. And that was the beginnings of the International Solidarity Movement. In the beginning, we were also able to go to Gaza until about 2003, when one of our colleagues was killed in Gaza, 23-year-old Rachel Corey, who was run over by an Israeli driving a US-made Caterpillar bulldozer. He flattened her to death, and a few weeks later also killed another member of the International Solidarity Movement, Tom Herndal, who is British. He actually lay in coma for 9 months before he passed away. But instead of any kind of accountability, Israel decided to just not let any more internationals into Gaza, and they closed off Gaza. We talk about a siege, but Israel has always controlled who goes in and out of Gaza. And all they did was tighten that in 2006, 2007. And those of us in the ISM who had been banned from Gaza for a long time were trying to think of what to do now that Israel had imposed this.
Thank you, Huwaida, for this touching and inspiring testimony. I'm proud really to have been part of your team. And thank you, Jude, and to Taawon Talks for this opportunity. My name is Hatem Laouini. I am a 50-year father to Yasmin, 13 years old, and Nidal. I am a Tunisian left-wing labor activist, if I can define myself, a militant in the labor union movement, but also in the revolutionary left-wing movement in Tunisia. For me, the intellectual and political awareness that I acquire and I have learned in all of my life and in my political struggle process was related in some way to Palestine. First, because I grew up in a family of Tunisian people who really love Palestine and Palestinians, and I grew up in a family, just like all Tunisians, that we know very well that Tunisian people once in 1948 some of them sold their homes and just took the way from Libya, then to Egypt, and then to Palestine, and they joined the Arab armies to fight for Palestine independence. I grew up within that narrative that Palestine is not something far away from us, and that our leaders, our ancestors, they fought for the independence of Tunisia, but some Tunisians also fought for Palestine. Later in 1982, I was 7 years old when the Palestinian fighters were obliged to give up their arms and leave Beirut. You know very well that they came to Tunis. And I live in a small town, 1 hour driving from Tunis. It is in the way that the Palestinians fighters took to go to their first place where they were temporarily settled by the regime of Bourguiba. So I myself, with my mother, my father, all of us, all of the neighbors, we were waiting for hours and hours just to see the fighters in the vans, in the cars, and we just were there to welcome them. In 2005, we also led demonstrations, very strong demonstrations, to really try to stop the visit of Sharon in 2005 in the Information Technology Summit in Tunisia, and we succeeded. Then I became part of the general solidarity movement with Palestine in Tunisia. I was deprived from my right to travel from 1998 till 2011 because of my political background. I couldn't travel, but I have been always impressed with the international solidarity movement, with Rachel Curie that Huwaida just mentioned, and but also with the Freedom Flotilla, or the first flotillas, and that just sailed to Gaza. I was impressed and I was following them, but I have never thought of really joining one of those missions. Later on, of course, with time and with our struggles, Palestine, I think, is central to my fight as a labor trade union leader later on with the Tunisian labor movement, but also I became also part of the peasants movement, and I'm now an elected member of the Secretariat of La Via Campesina in the Arab region, struggling with the Palestinian brothers in the peasants movement, but also as an elected leader in the labor movement with Uni Global. Then, of course, Palestine is part of our struggles. However, all of that is a process that I have always considered as part of my usual struggle work, but also we have always fought for really giving something special, not to show solidarity with Palestine. I am not Palestinian, but as a left-wing Tunisian activist, I have always been considering that I am not in solidarity with Palestine, but I am fighting with Palestinians for the freedom of Palestine. And that is the consciousness that I really could acquire in all of my life and political background. Then came October the 7th, which I think was a real earthquake in all over the world, and that shook the world and changed, I think, the solidarity movement, of course, with the brutality of the genocide, with the hundreds of thousands of Gazans injured and tens of thousands of martyrs, with all of Gaza destroyed and hospitals. Of course, we took the streets. I joined a lot of demonstrations. I tried to organize with ICOR, because I am also member of an international left-wing organizations of parties, which is called ICOR, International Coordination of Revolutionary Parties and Organizations, and I am the deputy coordinator. And all of these organizations later worked a lot in solidarity with Palestine. Unfortunately, I felt at a certain moment, I felt a feeling of disappointment, but also someone who is unable really to do something for real, something that is kind of not ephemeric, but something realistic, something that can be considered as added value. And then I followed Madeleine and Rima Hassan and the 12 really activists and leaders who sailed to Gaza. That was really inspiring for me. And then I started to hear about Hamdallah. And then I just one day decided that let me give it a shot and see if I can join this mission. First, because Hamdallah means a lot for me. I remember very well, I myself and my wife, who was at the 1990s, my comrade and my fiancée, and she called when we were in Hamdallah, she called Huwaida and she told her that I am really disappointed and I feel sad because I'm not with you. At that time in the 1990s, we really organized a lot of exhibitions of Najil Ali. And Najil Ali was someone, an inspiring personality for me. And I still remember very well his speeches, his writings, but also his caricature. And we used a lot Hamdallah caricature in the political education, in the student movement and labor union later. So it means a lot for me, Hamdallah. And then I called my the organizer of the flotilla that I could really join, who later became my friend, and I am proud to be now with her, who is Huwaida. It was not easy because they don't know me, but of course they just gave me a chance.
Thank you first for the privilege of being in this company. I mean, being in the flotilla itself was pretty remarkable for me in terms of the people I was with. I was in awe of some of them. And here we are continuing the fight. As for me, I'm from Bangladesh, and I've been through genocide. We've been through occupation. I've seen it myself. But at that time, the world stood by us. Of course, there were some people who did side with the occupiers, but by and large, there was solidarity. There were concerts. There was the Madison Square Garden concert out there, which was perhaps the first of the music events for humanitarian causes. And while we were under occupation, while people were dying, we always knew we were not alone. Now, I think it wouldn't be wrong for many people in Gaza to feel that the world had forgotten them. And I think, in a sense, that was part of what this journey was about, to tell them they had not been forgotten. All of my work over the last 40 years centers around issues of human rights and social justice. My compulsion for fighting for the rights of Palestinians stems from the fact that it is perhaps the most blatant act of abuse of human rights, of international law, and is accompanied by the most gross case of impunity in modern times.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to begin with saying it's really an honor and a privilege to be in this space. Your words, Jude, really resonated in the sense of the love. I think that is a very powerful part of so much of what we've witnessed, particularly over the last 2 years, but in the decades that preceded it, vis-a-vis the clarion call and the moral compass that Gaza and Palestine has become to so many, from so many walks of life across this globe. I'm actually standing here by a sea at the moment in a much colder context than the one that we sailed through recently. People from dozens of different countries and life experiences, but united very much in grief and in outrage, but also in love and solidarity. And I think one of sort of the moral imperatives of our time, as well as resistance, collective resistance to the dystopic violence, whether that is in Gaza or Sudan or Congo, but also the interlocking systems of oppression that so many people are grappling with. But one of the calls also is to remain tender and loving within our outrage, to remain tender and loving within the grief and the horror and the collective trauma, in many ways, of this witness, of the shattered bodies of Palestinian children, of the shattered bodies of Sudanese and Congolese, and so many children and adults and communities across the world whose daily, existence is in itself a form of resistance. And the community that so many of us have learned from in Palestine, the daily acts of care, of compassion, the social fabric of solidarity, has been so instructive to so many of us. And I know personally, because the brief, as well as sort of the broad brushstrokes or the meta sort of narrative of the broader canvas, is to bring this back into the personal, which I sometimes avoid doing. But I think in this case, it feels right amongst my friends and comrades in the sacred space of conversation that is created today. But personal journey vis-a-vis Palestine, or my personal journey, began at quite a young age, as a 21-year-old, through a group of sort of witnesses or accompaniers called the Christian Peacemaker teams, initially. And then I sort of branched out and found my leftist comrades in other forms of solidarity there. I lived in Jenin, in Jenin refugee camp, during and in the immediate aftermath of the massacre there. And what was supposed to, when I said goodbye to my very patient and supportive and loving family, my parents and siblings, what was meant to be sort of a 3-month visit or participation in accompaniment there, became, like so many of us, a life journey. I then ended up wounded and hospitalized and then deported, and then lived and worked in Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon and Syria, Iraq, and then eventually in Gaza. And it was through that witness in Gaza during Casled, or pre that actually, that I got involved with former comrades who had been involved in mobilizing around what seemed at the moment, at the time, like an impossible sort of gesture of radical imagination. So the sea has become, I think, for many of us, an experiment in mobilizing collective global solidarity, but also something, I think, that honors what anybody who has spent in Gaza knows. I think of the fisher folk and their songs at dawn as they walk down to the port, of how the sea is such a part of the fabric of Gaza, and that whole rhythm, in which, when one is living in, at best could be described as an open air prison pre the genocide, and much more than that. But became a place of refuge and escape and freedom and imagination. But to sail fishing boats to Gaza to try and break what at that stage was already a hermetic siege. So we mobilized. I was in Lebanon at the time when our first 2 boats got into Gaza. And then I joined the second mission after that, and participated in a number of missions, both on land and at sea, some of which got into Gaza, other ones which were blocked, one which was rammed by an Israeli naval vessel, and then the 2010 flotilla, in which 10 Turkish participants were killed, 9 of them immediately, and 1 died months later after a period of being in a coma. And from there, I think many of us, we thought that the possibility of getting or opening a people's corridor to Gaza was unlikely. But national campaigns persisted. So there were a number of sort of single country or international sometimes missions from a variety of different countries to Gaza. And those kept on going and kept on being blocked, and sometimes violently, sometimes less so, boarded and illegally towed, and then people would be arrested and deported. And then during this genocide, there was a revisiting of the urgency and necessity of trying to open up this sea route. So that began months into the genocide in Istanbul, when we had hundreds of people prepared to sail, and those ships were blocked from leaving port by the Turkish government. And then the Madlin, the Handala, and then the last 2 waves of the Global Samud Flotilla, and the conscience FFC, and the Thousand Mad Leaves. For so many people, young and old in Gaza, who felt the suffocating impact, of this forced dislocation and severance almost from, people across the world who wanted to show solidarity and wanted to visit and wanted to both accompany and walk with and learn from our Palestinian sisters and brothers and comrades. It was a moment of distilled humanity and beauty, and I felt that we were responding to the lighthouse of humanity that Gaza has become for so many. That signals hope and profound bravery without romanticizing that, but it's there amidst these storms of such bleak injustice. The eldest participant, 82, it was really a reminder of the power of the collective, the power of that intergenerational sharing, tactically, strategically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, because there was a real rhythm. I felt that as Shahidul described vis-a-vis the family that was formed, the communities, these contracted sort of spaces of these sailboats contained the whole spectrum of humanity, the whole spectrum of lived and political experience. And there was so much education within that space. So that was a difference. The difference was also that there was such powerful Global South participation and leadership. And I think for many of us, the racialized logic of the 2010 killings on the Mavi Marmara led to a certain paralysis in the sense of deep fear that men, particularly Muslim men on top of that, would be targeted in a way that other participants wouldn't. So there was concern, I think, and hesitation for years around votes being majority Global South participants, because there was an acknowledgement, as was mentioned in the throwing down of that passport, and the disrespect, no matter how anarchist we all are vis-a-vis, deconstructing nationhood and flags, etc. There was such, I think, a profound disrespect of the countries of origins of so many people on the flotilla, in that colonial arrogance that was, demonstrated time and time again in detention, time and time again in terms of the criminalizing narratives around us all and the action. But what was also different this time was I felt this sense of collective power, as has been referred to, and of courage. And there was something that transcended, I think, the abstract in that sailing, that the closer we got to Gaza, the more real it became, not just the horror, but also the potential, of actually reaching a place that has been held so deeply in mind and soul and spirit to and for so many over the past 2 years and the decades that preceded it. I was sailing between two vessels. One was the Shireen Abu Akleh, which is what we named the legal support vessel. We also named the vessel the Shireen to try and honor all of the Palestinian profoundly brave journalists who have been killed throughout the course of the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank. We were thinking of Anas and so many others. So I went between the Shireen and also the Alma, the soul of our souls, another vessel. And I remember the closer we got to Gaza, the more that sense of possibility emerged, that we could do. And the phrase that we've used in the Freedom Flotilla Coalition since 2008 has been, when governments fail, the people sail. And it really felt like, in the absence, in the profound, not even absence, in the profound failure and enabling and complicity of so many Western and other governments in the genocide, in the ethnic cleansing, in the apartheid, in the occupation for decades, that people were refusing a status quo of complicity in this horror. and were prepared to take risks, including prepared to risk their lives.
But when I think of this, I imagine people in Gaza of how it must be a constant earthquake every day with those bombs pummeling down, with lives being lost, with so little hope, and of course with starvation and all the other things that go around it. So in a sense, our pain is tempered by what we perceive to be the pain of others. But that is a pain we don't always see, and certainly not everyone sees. And that was very much part of what this journey was about. While I was inquiring about the Sumud, I heard there was going to be a media flotilla, and thought that it was, that was an opportunity for me to try and join, but I had no leads. I was in New York for the United Nations General Assembly, and I was having dinner with a friend, who I'm deliberately not naming because she's continuing to work with journalists and doesn't want to get her friends into trouble. We know what it's like. We're in this very repressive space where people are picked up and targeted and abused in all sorts of ways. But she mentioned that the media flotilla was about to leave. She didn't know much more, but was able to give me the WhatsApp number of Huwaida Arraf the next day. I wrote up to Huwaida, and she did respond. She wanted to know where I'd got this. Understandably, one had to be careful. One didn't really know how safe data communication was, who one was taking on, who one would be with in situations like that. But she sent me a list of documents I needed to send. By the time she sent them to me, it was already the 23rd of September. And she said, you've got to be on the flotilla. You've got to be in Brindisi by the 28th of September. I only got confirmation on the 24th. I immediately informed my partner, who was then in Bangladesh, that I wanted to go. She replied right away with 100% emoji, but then reminded me of a pact that we had made to each other, that we would die together. So there was just a hint. We made that pact, you'd better honor it. There were also logistic issues. When I left Dhaka, New York, there had been no preparation for Gaza. With the uncertainty ahead, arrangements had to be made, checks to be signed, authorization given, what if scenarios planned for. We didn't know when I'd be back, if I would get back, or any of those sort of things. In New York on the 25th, there was a discussion between the head of UNHCR, Volker Turk, and the head of the Bangladesh cabinet, Mohammed Yunus, and others on the 25th afternoon, which I was meant to attend. Interestingly, I just arranged an interview with Zohran Mamdani at 6:30 that evening, and I had to cancel that. One doesn't cancel an interview with Mamdani so easily, but I had to cancel that because that's the only way I would get to the flotilla, at least close to time. And I rushed off to the airport. I had a stop in Amman, another stop in Doha. I arrived in Dhaka. Of course, everyone was waiting at that time. Some people were very upset. They didn't want me to go. They were concerned, understandably. But, we had made a decision collectively. I signed documents. We held a press conference. I said goodbyes, did a lot of hugging, and I caught a flight to Rome. Having got there, then it was an on-line bus to Lecce. I got another bus to the nearest train station, a train ride, another bus, and trekked the rest. Eventually, I arrived at, I think I'm not pronouncing it right, I'm sure, but it was Baia de Macine, which was this sort of camping place, I suppose, on the 29th morning. I was late, but barely in time. One of the reasons we had to get there then was because Huwaida insisted, and rightly so, that we would go through the training that was necessary before we went onto the ship, so we knew how to deal with the situations that might be ahead. And Madeleine, who was the skipper, was fantastic. She was very rigorous, but also very kind and understanding. But that I was able to catch most of that train. In terms of why we were going, abuse has happened in the past, mostly by settler colonialists. The Herero and Nama genocide by Germans in Namibia, King Leopold's brutal exploitation of the Congo, apartheid in South Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, and the Holocaust, some of the others. This one is happening as we speak. There is absolutely no way anyone in the world today can say, I didn't know. Despite the blockade, despite the Western media is failing to let us know, it is something that everyone is facing, and there is no way we can deny the sort of abuse that is taking place. At RIG, we've been showing work on the abuses of Palestine through exhibitions at Shobimela, the International Festival of Photography that we run. The next one coming up in January 2026 will have a major section on Palestine. We're doing talks. I'm hoping that some brilliant writers and other people, thinkers, will be able to come. We don't know. We work on a shoestring budget, so we'll try and make it happen. We arranged fundraisers in 2008, 2009, again in 2014. I was involved in something called PACSOC, the Solidarity Movement for Palestinian artists, who continue to work in Palestine. We're trying to raise money for them. I have been trying to get to Gaza for all this period. I've been invited to TED Talk in Ramallah in 2011, but they just would not let me in. The Palestinian writer Adania Shibli arranged an exhibition of my work on migration. Migration, again, is something I've been doing for many, many years, around 2008. But again, I was not allowed in. But that was when the first flotilla took off, and I've been trying to join ever since. I remember a Pakistani boy saying that he hated blue skies. And the reason he hated blue skies was because that is when the drones would come. And he knew that blue skies meant drones. And that's what had happened to this young man. He hated blue skies. I remember children of Gaza welcoming death because they couldn't bear the hunger. Is there a tipping point? I think there are many. For me, there were many. The assassination of Shirin Abu Akleh, and at the RIC, at our agency, when you walk in to the premises, you're surrounded by, there's an image of Shirin Abu Akleh straight in front of you. There are the names of all the martyrs, the media professionals who've been killed. And of course, that number keeps changing. It's a constantly moving target. We have the names of the Western agencies that have been so complicit in this genocide. So the assassination of Shirin Abu Akleh was something. Aaron Bushnell's death, I thought would be something that would wake people up. I was horrified that the young man's death was forgotten. And he was allowed to die without us in any way remembering him, honoring him, or at least giving importance to the reason he died for. Of course, Rifat al-Hariri, I was just in Nepal yesterday, and I was looking at his last book. The powerful poetry that he wrote continues to resonate. But those were very much, each one of them were tipping points, but there have been so many. The hypocrisy of the West, particularly Western media, infuriated me. My partner, my sister, people around me were being torn every day. They had trouble sleeping. And that affects you when people around you are so intensely affected. It rubs up you no matter how strong you try and stay. Given the impunity Israel had, we knew words would have no effect. It was time for action. I imagined, I mean, Quiza was talking about the fishermen. I remember one of the joys of during this trip was the fact when we heard that the fishermen had been able to go out and fish again. It was an incredible feeling. I imagined how her sons were feeling, how they must have felt that the world has forgotten me. And I felt whether or not there was anything else we could have done, the fact that someone out there in Gaza would know that no, I've not been forgotten. There is someone out there. There are people out there who still remember me. I think that is an important feeling to get across. For them to feel they've not been forgotten by the world. Firstly, I think we anticipated that things could go very seriously wrong. We've seen what Israel has done, has gotten away with. I mean, I will refer to the initial bombing of the hospital when I think it was just testing the waters to see, oh, what happens if I bomb a hospital? And they say, oh, no problem at all. Let's bomb some more. And then it keeps getting worse. They do things, each act that they've done, one would have felt could never have been accepted, yet they are. No, people just turn the blind eye. So therefore, they come to a stage where they surely feel that they have the right to do anything that they want, and they will get away with anything that they want, that they do, which is exactly what has happened. Hence, we were threatening that invincibility, and we did fear serious repercussions. We did prepare. We prepared on the vessel itself for what might happen when we were boarded, because we were a much bigger vessel than the others. So we felt that they would probably come by helicopter, and they did. They came by helicopter. Though we prepared, what we didn't know was how this swirling wind and water and everything that was going round would feel like at the time of descent. I had been tasked with filming right till the end. So there I was, and then I saw the laser beam on my forehead. So you knew things were that close. Of course, the strip searching, the humiliation, the torture, more in some cases than others. And as you rightly say, Quiva, there's certainly racial overtones there. Whether you're white, whether you're brown, whether you're black, what passport you hold, whether you're male or not, whether you're a Muslim or not. There's a whole range of layers. And I was right at the bottom of that tier. Bangladesh is a nation that does not recognize Israel. It has no diplomatic connections. So I did not even have diplomatic representation. And until recently, until Sheikh Hasina had removed it, she was, of course, the one who took all the surveillance equipment from Israel. But until she had removed that statement, it had said in our passports, all countries of the world except Israel. So that was known. Our position was known. And that perhaps was also why my passport was treated the way it did. We were prepared for the worst. But we had prepared. I was up late at night, finding pictures, taking portraits of everyone, sending them to the lawyers so that the lawyers could represent us. And we've been told what to do, what not to do. But the humiliation, more than anything else, was the most difficult thing to take. But we had prepared for other things as well. One of the things we had agreed we would do is we would go on hunger strike. We would not accept any food, any water from them. They were our food and water in the first place, because we are the ones who were carrying it, which they'd stolen from us. But we knew they were filming. They had these GoPros on their helmets and things like that. And we knew that every action would be played out in the theater of propaganda. So we refused food and water. Not everyone could. Some were in had more health problems anyway. And even the ones who did not go on hunger strike, in the 2.5 days, were only given one plate of food and no water at all during that period. So it was effectively a hunger strike for all of us. But I would move back to something else, and that is in Bangladesh itself, this solidarity that we felt was phenomenal. I had so much support. I felt I was carrying 18 million people with me on the boat. The wishes, the prayers were there constantly. In the first 4 days of the journey, on my Facebook page, I got 500,000 new followers. And I was just getting flooded. People saying, I want to be on the boat. I'm with you.
I remember very well, I myself and my wife, who was at the 1990s, my comrade and my fiancée, and she called when we were in Handala, she called Huwaida and she told her that I am really disappointed and I feel sad because I'm not with you. At that time in the 1990s, we really organized a lot of exhibitions of Najil Ali. And Najil Ali was someone, an inspiring personality for me. And I still remember very well his speeches, his writings, but also his caricature. And we used a lot Hamdallah caricature in the political education, in the student movement and later union later. So it means a lot for me, Hamdallah. And then I called my the organizer of the flotilla that I could really join, who later became my friend, and I am proud to be now with her, who is Huwaida. It was not easy because they don't know me, but of course they just gave me a chance. They said, okay, we don't have enough space. We've been organizing this for a long time, but if you can just come to Italy and just try to join the training, then we will see probably if you can join. Otherwise, it would be you would be a land crew. And then I immediately just responded positively. And to be honest with you, at that time I didn't have enough money for my ticket. I just called a friend of mine and I told him, please just try to see if you can find a ticket for me. And then, just for the information, for the record, I just paid my ticket 3 months later, once back to Tunis. And I just called another friend who was also a land crew. He lives in Belgium. Huwaida knows him very well. He is Khalil, who was also trying to protect Hamdallah. I paid my ticket myself, and he paid my bus ticket from Rome to Gallipoli. And then it was not an easy trip for me, though, to just fly to Rome. It took me only 1 hour, but from Rome to Gallipoli, 12 hours in Flexibus, because I didn't have enough money at that time. So I just bought the lowest ticket. And then I just showed up in front of Huwaida and the comrades. I thought at that time they were a bit astonished. Who is this guy who came? And I did my best to show that I am really serious enough and I am disciplined, and I tried to do my best to join it. I felt as if I was an infant, a child, though I am 50 and I have a lot of experience, political experience, etc. And I've been through very tough moments. But at that time, it was as if, and I studied and I have my bachelor's and my master. At that time, it was as if an exam, and I was waiting for the result. Huwaida, am I part of Hamdallah? She said, okay, we are trying to see, let's wait and see. And I was trying to show my best to convince the leaders of Hamdallah. And then when the decision came and I was informed that I will be part of Hamdallah, it was probably one of the best moments of my life. And it really changed my life.
We talk about a siege, but Israel has always controlled who goes in and out of Gaza, and all they did was tighten that in 2006, 2007, and those of us in the ISM who had been banned from Gaza for a long time were trying to think of what to do now that Israel had imposed this really tightened restrictions that was not only devastating the Palestinian economy, but literally killing people. You had rising rates of malnutrition and anemia in pregnant women and stunted growth in children, really high unemployment, deliberately done by Israel, and the world wasn't doing anything about it, and we couldn't get into Gaza. And so in discussions, myself, I was actually in law school at the time, but we had a conference call, and one former ISM member came up with the idea of sailing a boat to Gaza. And honestly, at the time, I thought that was a stupid idea because we didn't have a boat. We didn't have money to get a boat. And none of us knew the first thing about operating a boat. So I was like, I don't know if that's going to work. But some people, a small group of people really set their sights on making this happen and fundraise for about a year and a half. And then in the summer of 2008, 44 of us, even though I originally thought it was not possible. I joined the first mission. We gathered in Cyprus. We had 2 small fishing boats, and we were going to set sail to Gaza. And our mission and our message to the Israelis and to the world was like, we're not turning back. Israel has no right to control Gaza. They tell the world that their siege is about security, and it has absolutely nothing to do with security. And we're going to show that because the Palestinian people are inviting us to Gaza, and we're going. And we're not turning back despite all of Israel's threats. And we set sail with Israel threatening to forcefully stop us, but we were determined. And before we sailed, I remember, because, I had all of my years of experience with the international solidarity movement and training internationals to confront Israeli soldiers, we did extensive training. And, I remember going through all of the scenarios and letting people know that, they could try to blow us out of the water. They could try to sabotage our boats, sink it, make it look like it was an accident. At best, maybe we will be arrested and nobody will get hurt, but people could get seriously injured and even killed. And if people aren't ready to accept that, then they should not step foot on those boats, because we're not turning back. When we're at sea, we're not going to turn back. And even though nobody who was with us on that first mission had a death wish or, was prepared to go on a suicide mission or anything like that, people had their families, their homes, their jobs, their children, or their parents, their grandchildren. We had grandparents, we had artists, we had parliamentarians, we had medics, we had students, people that had a love for life, and did not want to die. I did not want to die, but we firmly believed in what we had to do. And this situation that Israel has created, that the world wasn't doing anything about, that our governments were not only, at best, they weren't doing anything about, but in a lot of cases were also complicit in enabling what Israel was doing. We just can't allow that to happen without some kind of active and direct challenging of it. So with that, nobody decided to step down. And so we set sail. To make a long story short, Israel in the end backed down. And for the first time in over 40 years since Israel had occupied Gaza, we were going to make it to Gaza with, these are 2 small boats without Israel's permission. And when we first realized that, at first, I was like, oh my gosh, we had planned for every scenario. We did not actually plan for making it to Gaza, because we never thought it would happen. What we had wanted to do was expose Israel's policy for the farce that it was, that it had nothing to do with security. But then it was just an incredible amount of joy, because as we neared the port, we saw just thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that had heard on the news, on Al Jazeera. We had an Al Jazeera journalist with us, that Israel was not going to intercept us, and our boats were making their way to Gaza. Tens of thousands of people poured into the port, and kids jumped into the water, and fishermen jumped into their boats to sail out to us to welcome us. And it was honestly just so incredibly beautiful, because here we are. I mean, I was Palestinian, or I was one of 2 Palestinians out of 44. The rest were mainly from the United States and Europe, countries that are enabling Israel's attempt to annihilate the Palestinian people, and specifically the people in Gaza who are every day fighting to survive. And they welcomed us with such joy and love and respect. It was breathtaking, and it was humbling. And I still to this day don't really don't understand the capacity of Palestinian people to continue to believe in love and life and to treat people with so much respect that the world hasn't shown to them. And so they have so much to teach the world in that respect. But one of the things that we did when we left Gaza a few days later, and we were able to take out actually with us some Palestinians who had been trapped in Gaza. We didn't have a lot of room on our boat, so we only were able to take out 7 Palestinians with us, and we left we left internationals in Gaza to restart the international solidarity movement there. And we promised that this would not be a one-time thing, because we overcame this blockade once, but to really break it, we needed to continue to sail back and forth and effectively open a sea route to Gaza. And so we promised that we would do that. And that's what we have been continuing to try to do since 2008. We were able to get in that year, the 2008, 4 more times, and I was on 4 of those 5 missions that we were actually able to get into Gaza. And then at the end of 2008, after Israel began Operation Cast Lead, we tried to send an emergency mission, and Israel hit those boats, deliberately trying to sink it. They rammed. It was actually only 1 boat at the time. It was one very small yacht, and Israel rammed it 3 times, causing it to take on water and almost capsize. We tried to go again 2 weeks later, and Israel also nearly sank that boat. We tried to go again a few months later, and Israel commandeered that boat, kidnapped all of us on board. So it wasn't looking like it was working anymore to be able to get into Gaza. And our options were at the time that this tactic isn't working anymore, so we have to stop and think of something else, or we have to try to escalate. And we didn't want to give into this notion that Israel's military might and brutality were stronger than the rights that we were fighting for, so we decided to escalate. And we escalated by growing from what we were, a handful of activists, and we called ourselves the Free Gaza Movement. We reached out to different Palestine solidarity groups in different countries, and we formed the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. So we became a coalition of different groups in different countries. And in 2010, we launched the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. And instead of being 1 or 2 small fishing boats, we were 7 ships. 4 of them were cargo ships. We carried 10,000 tons of aid. We had 700 people. And we set sail in May of 2010. I should say in all the previous missions, except for the emergency missions that we tried to sail, the first 5, when we got in, we weren't carrying humanitarian aid. One, our boats barely fit any aid, but more importantly, even though Gaza desperately needed aid, our boats weren't going to be able to carry the aid that Gaza needed, and we weren't about perpetuating the humanitarian aid cycle. Palestinians don't want to live on aid. Our message is Israel has no right to control Gaza. Palestinians have the right to be free. Palestinians want to be free, to control their own borders, to work, to lead a life with dignity, and to feed themselves. And so we need to, and governments and organizations, everybody needs to be challenging this siege, not accepting it. And so we are confronting it. We need to break it. And so in that sense, we didn't carry aid with us, but we carried a strong message that we aren't accepting this siege, and the world needs to join us in breaking it. To go back, in 2010, Israel launched a lethal attack on that flotilla, and it killed 10 of our colleagues. But again, we did not want to give in to Israel's brutality and let it stop us. So we continued trying to sail and break the siege through the years. But what happened is Israel started getting these countries that we were leaving from to collaborate with them and to stop us. So, we used to launch from Cyprus. Cyprus stopped letting us go. Greece would stop our boats. Even the Turkish government wouldn't let us go anymore. And so it became harder to actually get boats to leave port. So we were never able to organize that big of a flotilla again. We were able to send out a few boats here and there until 2023, when we decided we have to, against all odds, do something big and try to get in as much aid. Israel was deliberately starving people, and the whole world could see. So the siege that was back in 2006, 7, and 8, back then it was a form of collective punishment, clearly. Now it was not only collective punishment, Israel was using it as a tool of its genocide to engineer famine and the starvation campaign. And it was obvious to the world, yet still no one was doing anything about it. And we did come together, even though the world could see the savagery of Israel and what it was doing to Gaza, and that it had even killed internationals. At the time, it was April 2024, and Israel had killed World Central Kitchen workers. And this was a time when we were trying to launch another flotilla. And even though it was clear that Israel was like unleashed and felt like it could operate with absolutely no restriction and total impunity, people still gathered, and hundreds came to Istanbul in April of 2024 to get on our flotilla to try to sail to Gaza. But again, we were bureaucratically sabotaged. Our flags were pulled, and then the Turkish government wouldn't let us go. But that didn't stop us, and that leads us to 2025, when we were able to launch a number of boats. I don't know if I should continue to talk about them or, yeah. So even though we weren't able to sail in 2024, we got our flag back for our boats, but then the Turkish government would not release the vessels that we had. Our Turkish partners launched a protest. Literally, it was called Freedom Watch, and day and night they chained themselves to the port, demanding that the release of our boats for about 5 months. In the winter, rain, no matter what the weather, people were keeping a 24-hour protest at the port, demanding the release of our boats. And finally, through negotiations with the Turkish government, they released one of our boats, called the Conscience. And that boat sailed out. And in May, we had planned to sail it. In May 2025, we had planned to sail it to Gaza. And the night before most of the internationals were supposed to board the ship, we had only 16 crew members on board. Israel bombed the ship. And it bombed the ship before it had even set sail, a civilian vessel that was going to be carrying only humanitarian aid and civilians, and it bombed it in European waters, obviously escalating not only their savagery, but the sphere of the area that they were operating in. And what was deeply upsetting, shocking, but maybe not so shocking because this is Europe, and that they did not hold Israel accountable. You barely heard a peep out of them. And the Maltese government, sad to say, almost treated us as if we were the criminals. They would not let us bring the boat into port so we can get the people who were on board, who had been traumatized by this attack while they were on board, so we can get them off. Within the European system, politically or otherwise, Israel faced no consequences. But this is what we were used to, of course, so we continued to kind of campaign and try to highlight how our governments were failing and letting Israel get away with all of these crimes. And at the same time, we were working to get another boat to be able to launch. And within a month, we weren't able to launch a flotilla or a big boat, but we got one small sailboat. It carried 12 people, and we launched it from Sicily. And even though it wasn't a big flotilla, I think the idea of this one small sailboat with 12 people on it, and a couple of high-profile people like Rima Hassan, who was a member of the European Parliament, and Greta Thunberg, the noted climate activist. The idea of one small sailboat going to confront a brutal genocidal military that was actively carrying out a genocide, I think that awakened something in people globally who were so frustrated and outraged and couldn't move their governments to see this small sailboat go take on the Israeli Navy, sparked people's hope and imagination. And so people started saying, then we need to all be sailing towards Gaza. Instead of one small sailboat, let's get 1,000 sailboats. That sailboat was called the Madeleine. And people started saying, let's get 1,000 Madeleines, which obviously we at the Freedom Flotilla Coalition thought that was wonderful. We knew the difficulties of actually obtaining a boat and all that it took to launch even one boat. But we encouraged people to do that and to work with us to do that. Shortly thereafter, well, let me say Israel attacked the Madeleine and kidnapped everybody on board. It commandeered the boat. That boat was carrying a modest amount of aid, took all of the aid, of course, and it tried to humiliate and abuse the 12 civilians on board, and then ended up deporting them. That did not stop us. A month later, Hatem and I were on the same boat called the Handala, and we tried to go to Gaza again. We were still one small boat, and this Handala boat, even though it was one small boat, we were 21 people on board. We dedicated that boat to the children of Gaza because of what Handala represents in Palestinian culture. And because we had used this boat previously also to sail around European ports and wake, this was before October 2023, we were sailing that boat to different ports to try to educate people about Israel's siege and mobilize people. And it was always a campaign for the children of Gaza. So we actually had letters for the children of Gaza. We were carrying baby food, baby formula, in addition to other food. The modest amount of aid, incredible amount of solidarity, and lots of stuffed animals donated to the children of Gaza, setting off to try to reach Gaza. And even though we had been hit and we had stopped so many times before, I always sail with the hope and the determination of reaching Gaza. And one of the core messages that I was sending out from the boat is, of all of our countries who are saying that Israel should be allowing more food into Gaza and Israel should not be starving the children of Gaza, and who are, feigning this outrage over pictures and videos of emaciated Palestinian children, if they are not now sending a message to Israel not to attack our boats, they're going to let Israel attack the Handala, then it should be very clear that they are very complicit, not only complicit, but they are actually an active partner with Israel in starving Palestinian children and in this genocide as a whole. What did our small boat, what kind of security threat did that constitute, that Israel had to send out its elite naval forces to attack us, which they did on July 27th, I think it was, when we were attacked. And they, as they always do, come in the middle of the night, cut off all of our communications, they jam our GPS, they jam our radar, they cut all of our internet, and they take over with their armed commandos. And this time they were carrying really almost as many cameras as they were guns and tear gas and other weapons, because they tried to film themselves being gentle and humanitarian, which of course we understood that they might try to do, and we did our best not to allow them to do. We had announced before that we are not accepting any food or water from a genocidal military that was denying the same to Palestinian children. So even though they tried to force it on us, they literally were putting water barrels in front of us and filming themselves doing that. But we had already announced that we would be on a hunger strike and we weren't taking anything from them. So I think their attempt to create their propaganda video did not work. But the same thing happened but those of us on the Handala were even more brutal with some of us this time than they were with the people on the Madeleine. Our colleague, Chris Smalls, was really the only African American on the boat. The only African on the boat was beaten up pretty bad. Another one of our colleagues, Tan, also was beaten and humiliated and repeatedly strip searched in prison. Still suffers injuries to this day, and some others. And again, Israel doesn't face repercussions. Our governments are not cutting off aid. They are continuing to gaslight the world in their continued support for Israel. But the movement continues. And after the Handala, shortly thereafter, the Global Sumud Flotilla launched. All of the people that had, and the organizations that expressed an interest in doing the same, mobilized to get boats, which formed kind of the largest number of boats sailing to Gaza at one time in the Global Sumud. which I ended up being on the last boat that launched in the Global Samud Flotilla, the Conscience, the boat that was bombed in Malta. We fixed it, and it was the last boat to leave as part of this kind of civilian wave over the summer that will continue. It will continue because we are not, as global civil society, Palestinians don't have a choice not giving up. And global civil society, we understand that Palestine is kind of a test case. Israel and its allies are trying to create a world where there is no international law, there is no protections for people, there's no respect for human rights, there's only military might is right and brutality. And this is a world in which no one is safe and a world in which we can't accept.
I would like to speak of mobilizations and political sites, of trainings, of docks, of ships, of crews, of how ordinary people are turning into practitioners on the water. I would like to hear from you more about how this mobilization takes place and of these sites as active political sites, because there always are active political sites, docks and ships, but within this context that you're working in, tell us more.
How to articulate? I know there are probably a lot of questions, and it seems like massive. I mean, how do you organize something like this? And I always come back to there's just a very simple core message that there's something that we can all do. And when we started, or when the idea to sail a ship to Gaza came up, I mean, we didn't have a boat. We didn't have money to get a boat. In the International Solidarity Movement, we didn't have funders. When we started the International Solidarity Movement, we didn't have a fancy plan. We did not have an organizational chart. We did not have an organizational plan. We did not have a funding plan. We had no money, but we knew we had to do something. And so we just put out a call for people to come, and we built on that energy, and we did what we could in organizing and built on people's experience. So the people who originally came with us in our first campaign went back to their home countries, spoke of their experience, tried to encourage other people to come, and more people came with different experience and different networks and joined us. And because we had experience on the ground with Palestinian organizers who lived there, it was very important that it's always Palestinian led. Leading and organizing on the ground and using the experience and the solidarity and the networks that people have. And then those people go back to their home countries and they do what we ask them to do, is to spread the word, tell people what you see. And it spiraled like that. And so when the idea for sailing a boat to Gaza came, like I said, I originally thought it was crazy because we didn't have a boat and it seemed kind of like a massive undertaking that we weren't equipped for. But you set your mind to it. You reach out, you somehow make it happen. And we made those first 2 boats to Gaza happen in August of 2008. And the energy kept flowing. More people heard about it, contacted us, wanting to be on it. Now, when we formed the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, and as the coalition exists today, it's a coalition that is made up of groups in different countries that do Palestine solidarity work. And we have representatives to a steering committee that we meet regularly, on conference calls. And about once a year, we meet face to face unless we need more meetings. And we strategize and see what's possible we can do. We have a technical committee, and this was developed over time. The very first captains that we had helped us reach out to other captains and technical crew. And sometimes we're at a shortage for these people. And we ask people who put it out to their networks. And we really build on, again, the different connections that people have in order to mobilize. So when we decide something as, the steering committee of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, then we work within our countries to recruit people, we have to vet people. Of course, sometimes we get an overwhelming amount of applications. I remember even last year when we were organizing the flotilla that was supposed to leave from Istanbul, we got something like 14,000 applications on our main site. And sometimes we can't keep up with everything that happens, but we do our best. We do our best. And we build on our experience. So when we decide to do a mission, we work within our countries then to fundraise to support the mission. And a lot of the fundraising, all the fundraising really is just grassroots support to support the mission. Then, we're receiving applications and we're vetting people to make sure that, that they would be a good fit, that they don't have issues that could keep them from participating fully and safely in this mission. And when we come together, and sometimes it might seem a little chaotic because it is trying to juggle a lot of things. Some of the things that we have, information that we have to give, can't be publicized too far ahead of time. Like sometimes we've had to keep the port that we're leaving from quiet because of Israel's history of working with port authorities to try to sabotage our mission, or etc. And so, these things are constantly in discussion by this network of, or this coalition that we are, that is very horizontal, that is, everyone is volunteer. And so we all have, our other work and our families and everything, but also commit what we can to this because we think it is important, and not just important. We really think it's vital. It's vital to just overcome the horrors that have been happening in Palestine for way too long, and the participation of our governments, but also vital for really the kind of world that we want to create for our own selves and for our kids. And so we continue to do this, and now we're in.
Thanking you to have given me the opportunity, and I can truly say that I'm proud because with Huwaida as a team leader, and she is really committed and dedicated, but also with the team. We were 21, we just dropped our passports, and we became all Palestinians.
I would like to hear from you more about how this mobilization takes place and of these sites as active political sites, because there always are active political sites, docks and ships, but within this context that you're working in, tell us more.
Probably, I fully agree with Huwaida. And from my experience, I don't have the experience that Huwaida has regarding the flotillas and the boats. However, the Hamdallah experience really gave me the opportunity to meet incredible people. If I may talk about the land crew, for example, the Italian comrades, but also from different nationalities, but exceptionally the Italians who came there, but also some other nationalities. They showed really a lot of solidarity, a lot of love, but a lot of expertise. As you just said, they are normal people with no experience with the sea, with the boats, but they were incredibly efficient. You remember, Huwaida, that the day we decided to sail, we discovered that there was some people who tried to pump a toxic, what was it? It was acid, I think, in the water.
Acid.
Yeah, and we discovered that. Thanks to whom? Thanks to the comrades who were protecting Hamdallah, but also thanks to the expertise of the captain who knew that there is something suspicious. We also discovered that there was a sabotage. They were trying to stop us when they just put a rope around the vessel, the boat, and we discovered that. And it seems that one of the land crew who discovered that. So this is let's say the wisdom, but the expertise of people, but also they spent hours and hours a day. I still remember, if I may, the young Italian comrades whose assignment was the security and the protection of Hamdallah. They just show up around 6 p.m. with their guitars, with their all of their equipments, with their love also, but also they stay the night until 6, 7, sometimes 8. When we arrive to the port, they just leave to take a few hours to really rest. They were also the heroes. These people, they were also part of the mission. But I also remember the Palestinian people who were there, who lived in Palestine, but also who brought their expertise. I remember some comrades who helped a lot, Huwaida and comrades. But I also later on would like to highlight the trade unions, the Italian trade unions who organized strikes, who boycotted the shipping the Israel with arms, and that is very important. Same action in Spain, same action in a lot of countries. I think that the role the labor union and the dockers played is of paramount importance. And I think we saw a shift of labor unions to left and to more radical actions, because I would say that the Palestinian revolution and the Palestine movement in general and the solidarity movement impacted a lot the awareness of the labor unions, of artists, of people, and we've seen hundreds of thousands of people who took the streets. When I was there preparing for Hamdallah, we went to a small city, or maybe a town called Brandisi, where we really demonstrated against an Italian, an American military base, from where the Israeli have a cooperation with Italian government when it comes to the attacks of Mediterranean, but also to the drones. So Israel, the Zionists, the imperialists are everywhere. They are very strong. However, the Hamdallah and the Freedom Flotilla Coalition and the solidarity actions we have been able to do, I am just a very small part of this, but Huwaida and the comrades have been able to do. I think they just made, or if I can say, they changed the narrative. They made the Israel defeatable. The Israeli military force can be really defeated, and we can take the sea, we can sail off, and we can go to Palestine, and we can challenge the illegal siege and blockade. And I think we have been really successful in that. The organization, I think, was really perfect, because it was not complicated. It was, as Huwaida said, I'm not part of the organization, but I just was participant, but I was part of the crew, so I followed rules. So there were strict rules, but all of them in relation to protecting the group, to the security of the group, to having someone who lead, because at the moment, at the very critical moment, we cannot have 5 leaders. We only have the leader, one leader, and it was Huwaida. And I would like to congratulate her as a Palestinian woman, especially as a woman, because that really means a lot to us. And she brilliantly succeeded in her mission. But also Caoimhe, who gives her testimony, she was land crew, but she brought a lot of her love, of her expertise. And I would like also to salute Tan, the Palestinian Australian, who brought her expertise of the press and how to deal with the media. But I also probably remember Grandma Vigdis from Norway, who brought first her skills of cooking, but also her love. And then we just discover that she is the strongest, that she is the toughest, that she really kind of challenged the army. So these people, I think they brought their expertise, and the organization was very simple, that all of us together are a team. But I think organization is of paramount importance. Training is of paramount importance, but also the discussion, paying attention to every single detail. And I finish with remembering Huwaida and Tan when they were in the training. It was as if serious. When we say, come on, it's drills. And when we sailed off with the drills and with the drilling and with the exercises, we took it seriously. because we really discovered later when we were intercepted that all of the training was worthwhile, and it helped us a lot really to know how to deal with the Israeli soldiers, because they are savage, they are barbarian, and they are very tough, but they try to use what I would call cinema to show that they are humane, and that they brought some sandwiches and water. Fortunately, we had someone with the experience and expertise of Huwaida. We refused to take from them food, and we said we don't take food from the soldiers and from the army who is killing the children in Gaza. And we declared the hunger strike from that very moment, and it was really an agreement that we start our hunger strike. So it was an incredible moment, but I think now we should draw lessons of organization, of how to organize ourselves.
There are a few moments or things that you had both mentioned that brings about the question of trust and strategy and alignment. We are talking about a global movement here, and we are talking about organization, proper, serious, systemic organization. And we would like to ask you, how does this cross-national solidarity or organization within solidarity bloom, and how do these systems form? So for Caoimhe, you can compare to previous action, you can compare to past experiences that have happened. So I would like us to open the floor to an open discussion between us about the systemic parts of this action, and how it compares to past action. So Caoimhe, maybe you can give us a departure point of how you see how we can have a comparative, we could draw a comparative analysis.
What was also different this time was I felt this sense of collective power, as has been referred to, and of courage. And there was something that transcended, I think, the abstract in that sailing, that the closer we got to Gaza, the more real it became, not just the horror, but also the potential, of actually reaching a place that has been held so deeply in mind and soul and spirit to and for so many over the past 2 years and the decades that preceded it. I was sailing between two vessels. One was the Shireen Abu Akleh, which is what we named the legal support vessel. I knew Shireen in the West Bank at the beginning of the second Intifada. She was the first person, other than the beautiful family that I was living with in Jenin camp and paramedics that I knew from accompanying ambulances, but who visited me in Jenin hospital after I was shot. And I just remember being in the presence of her calm, and her care, of her humor, but also this deep, deep dignity, as a very beloved daughter of Palestine, and I've met so many people over the years who have been compasses for me, in that intergenerational learning. But Shireen, there was a quality just to the deep dignity with which she held, I think, her own courage, but also the dignity with which she received and communicated with and interacted with everybody, particularly in that hospital setting, from people fulfilling all of, the different roles of care within there. We also named the vessel the Shireen to try and honor all of the Palestinian profoundly brave journalists who have been killed throughout the course of the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank. We were thinking of Anas and so many others. So I went between the Shireen and also the Alma, the soul of our souls, another vessel. And I remember the closer we got to Gaza, the more that sense of possibility emerged, that we, could do. And the phrase that we've used in the Freedom Flotilla Coalition since, 2008 has been, when governments fail, the people sail. And it really felt like, in the absence, in the profound, not even absence, in the profound failure and enabling and complicity of so many Western and other governments in the genocide, in the ethnic cleansing, in the apartheid, in the occupation for decades, that people were refusing a status quo of complicity in this horror, and were prepared to take risks, including prepared to risk their lives. And I've been part of other movements in the West Bank, the International Solidarity Movement, accompaniment movements, where, yes, some of our comrades were killed, such as Rachel and Tom, and Aisha Noor and others. But this felt different. I think particularly after the 2 attacks off the coast of Tunisia, and also off the coast of Crete with the incendiary devices and the drones, it became very real to people that there was a possibility that we would be bombed, or that lethal violence would be used. But there was power. There was real power.
They came by helicopter. Though we prepared, what we didn't know was how this swirling wind and water and everything that was going round would feel like at the time of descent. I had been tasked with filming right till the end. So there I was, and then I saw the laser beam on my forehead. So you knew things were that close. Of course, the strip searching, the humiliation, the torture, more in some cases than others. And agreed we would do is we would go on hunger strike. We would not accept any food, any water from them. They were our food and water in the first place, because we are the ones who were carrying it, which they'd stolen from us. But we knew they were filming. They had these GoPros on their helmets and things like that, and we knew that every action would be played out in the theater of propaganda. So we refused food and water. Not everyone could. Some were in had more health problems anyway. And even the ones who did not go on hunger strike, in the 2.5 days, were only getting 1 plate of food and no water at all during that period. So it was effectively a hunger strike for all of us. There were doubts, and we did not know. I at least did not know what might happen, and I was prepared. When my partner said, "You have promised that we will die together," that was a promise I gave her, and I didn't know if I could honor it. But that was a journey we had to make.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a way to reformulate this threatening this invincibility that they presume they have, or threatening actually their shamelessness, this arrogant colonial shameless entity that has been able to enter into these souls of all these people, making them these creatures of death, creatures of taking your own food and giving you back 1 plate in 2.5 days. This is precisely a metaphor that would explain Israel for me. Yani the psychology of colonial violence is, it never fails to surprise us truly. Yani. And it's an interesting response to what did you imagine was going to happen. And I would like to now reformulate it of, did you feel like there was hope of you getting to Gaza?
I am just a very small part of this, but Huwaida and the comrades have been able to do. I think they just made, or if I can say, they changed the narrative. They made the Israel defeatable. The Israeli military force can be really defeated, and we can take the sea, we can sail off, and we can go to Palestine, and we can challenge the illegal siege and blockade. And I think we have been really successful in that. The organization, I think, was really perfect, because it was not complicated. It was, as Huwaida said, I'm not part of the organization, but I just was participant, but I was part of the crew, so I followed rules. So there were strict rules, but all of them in relation to protecting the group, to the security of the group, to having someone who lead, because at the moment, at the very critical moment, we cannot have 5 leaders. We only have the leader, one leader, and it was Huwaida. And I would like to congratulate her as a Palestinian woman, especially as a woman, because that really means a lot to us. And she brilliantly succeeded in her mission. But also Caoimhe, who gives her testimony, she was land crew, but she brought a lot of her love, of her expertise. And I would like also to salute Tan, the Palestinian Australian, who brought her expertise of the press and how to deal with the media. But I also probably remember Grandma Vigdis from Norway, who brought first her skills of cooking, but also her love. And then we just discover that she is the strongest, that she is the toughest, that she really kind of challenged the army. So these people, I think they brought their expertise, and the organization was very simple, that all of us together are a team. Now, I think later with Sumud Flotilla, I think things are different. I consider that this is my evaluation. I fully respect the comrades of Sumud Flotilla. I have comrades and I have family, and I was a trainer and I helped a lot. But I think we should really think of the organization in the future, because Sumud Flotilla was very big, but it brought a lot of problems of organization, because the bigger you are, the more problems of organization you will have with the boats, they just put an objective which was very hard to achieve. That's why I think organization, perfect organization, is of paramount importance. And I think that the expertise of FFC since 2008 is something to be respected and to be followed. Something else I would probably bring as an element here is the visits of people, as Huwaida said, and I still remember who brought their toy animals, but also brought food. And I still remember, if you remember, when there was a Tunisian who gave me the traditional Tunisian hat. He just told me, Hatem, you have it. He is a Tunisian migrant worker in Italy. And you know that there are a lot of hundreds of thousands of Tunisians who live in Italy. And he said, please, if you arrive to Gaza, please take it with you to Gaza. If not, take it to Palestine and just put it in the prison, throw it. And I made sure that I put it, and it became, it went viral in the Tunisian social media. Myself in Hamdallah with the Tunisian hat, it was something very small, but it was symbolic. And he brought the Tunisian traditional couscous, and later on he brought the traditional biscuits. And I think it's very simple and very small gestures of solidarity, but it meant a lot.
I'm going to add just 2 quick things to what I think Hatem brilliantly explains. One has to do with just the importance of what everyone gives. You know, when we are in port, the people who stop by to give solidarity, to bring things, to be a part in some way, is really impactful emotionally for those of us who are taking part, or those of us who are organizing, but also as a collective and as this grand, the mission that we are doing, because every way that people can feel a part of it strengthens the mission. It's not just those of us, the tens or even the hundreds that are on the boat. It needs to be the millions that feel like they are a part of this mission. And whether it is donating, $1 or a stuffed animal, even the kids feeling that they were a part of it by donating their stuffed animals, or by being part of the send-off that we do, or a cultural political event that we do at the port before we launch, it all creates this global effort. So it's more than just the limited number of those of us who can fit on the boats who are going at sea. It really is a global movement. Then you have also the unions and other organizations that are either striking or threatening to shut down or protesting or holding vigils while we are at sea. Creates, makes this more than just the direct action that are the boats at sea. And I think that that's so incredibly important, vital, really aspect of our mission. And then, Hatem reminded me this of all of the training and the drills that we do. We have experience from what we've done in the past, and we, try to train people or to transfer that experience, not knowing exactly what will happen, but just conveying what we know from what happened in the past. And certainly recommendations, we have red lines in terms of how people can act and how they cannot act, but also a lot of this is realizing that we're a collective of people who are coming from different places and different experiences. We have different strengths and different weaknesses, different ideas about things. So we always want to try as much as possible to be comfortable with what we decide we are going to do. That is within the confines of what we permit, as a Freedom Flotilla Coalition, and building on, again, experiences of what has worked and what has not worked. And so even though we had the critical training while we were on land, and that is done so that we can weed out people who shouldn't be on the boat, either if it's people who don't accept all the risks or consequences, or people who we see are not reacting well or not gelling well with the with the collective, and therefore might be harmful or might be a liability, or etc. So we do weed out people in that land training that is critical. If you don't participate in the land training, you cannot get on the boats. But then on the boats, we continue those discussions. So we get kind of we get this kind of collective agreement, so we know each other well and what we are comfortable with, and to also build on other people's ideas, which is one of the things that I've come to really value from my time with the International Solidarity Movement, just seeing how much I learned from people who were coming from different backgrounds, different countries, their experiences, even though those people might not have had the direct experience that I had with the Israeli soldiers. They had, experiences and ideas that we can all learn from. And so I've kept that with me, that okay, even though I might have this experience, I also learn from you, and we learn from each other. And so we had these daily conversations kind of on the boats, discussions, not really debates, but all in the sense to grow our collective strength. And I think one of the things that I said, which I don't know, you can tell me if it was true or not, Hatem, but you're also dealing, it's people who have a conviction and are willing to do this. But that's not to say people aren't scared or people aren't worried. And so we talked about how to just calm yourself when you are going to be put in an objectively scary situation with, a very brutal military attacking you in the middle of the night after they have cut off your communication. Like, that was the most likely scenario. So how do you keep calm? How do you regulate yourself so that you do not panic, etc. We talked about this, and one of the things that I said, I'm not necessarily trained in these different modes of self-regulation and or mantras and breathing. I learned these things from others, but what I said is, like, look, in the moment, you might not believe me now, but I think in the moment you will feel stronger than they are, and that will help you keep calm and not be afraid, because we are doing something that is right and something that is humane, and they are coming at us with all of these weapons for what? To stop baby formula from getting to children that are being deliberately starved, from denying a people their freedom. I mean, this, just holding on to this knowledge that we are in the right, and they are actually the weak ones, even with all of their weapons and their military boats or their helicopters, whatever they have. They are the weak ones. Will help you keep calm, and you will feel stronger than they are. I don't know if that translated. I know that that's what I feel in the situations, in the various times that I've been attacked by Israeli forces. What did you think, Hatem?
Yeah, I fully agree, because you can be brave enough, and you have the conviction that you are ready for that. But I think objectively it is scary, because if you do not recognize your fear, and that you can be afraid, you can be frightened, that's humane, you will be really you will be facing a lot of problems. The issue is not to deny fear, but to know how to control your fear. And the training we went through helped us a lot, because, to be really honest, we went through different scenarios, and the training was so efficient that when the right moment, the moment of interception and arrest came, we were ready. However, for 8 and 9, or probably 9 rough days of sailing, because we were talking a lot, we were discussing, we were just ready and exercising every day, we were ready for that. However, I think that also, and I talked with Huwaida about that, at a certain moment we felt that there is a political part which is a bit missing. That's why Huwaida, I, and some other comrades who have the political knowledge, we discussed a lot. And we really discussed about the history of Palestine, about the history of the Palestinian resistance, not only on the boats, but also when we were imprisoned. I was imprisoned in the same cell with 6 other comrades. We were 7, and in front of us there was the cell of 2 other brothers, an Australian, the comrade Raymond, and someone else. And I remember very well that we turned the cell in a room of political education. I myself, with a Spanish trade unionist, he didn't have the language skills, but his comrade and our brother Sergio was translating, so we were discussing a lot. And I just tried to really seize the opportunity and the moment to speak about the history of the Palestinian revolution, the Palestinian fractions, the problems between FPLFP, DFLP, Hamas, etc., so on and so forth, but also the history of colonization. And I would say that, I don't know why I'm just remembering this now, on our 3rd day of imprisonment, we just heard an explosion, and we were not sure of what happened. And I doubted that it was a Yemeni missile. And I was almost sure. However, we doubted that. So I talked to the comrades that it was the Yemen. Some of the comrades said, what if that missile hit us in the prison? Because it was very close that you think that it is just around. Tomorrow, the day after, when we met our lawyer, she confirmed that there were 2 Yemeni missiles that were intercepted. And I still remember very well to be honest, I'm sorry to tell this, I don't know if it fits in the talks. We were very happy. That means at least the Yemeni missiles, they were showing solidarity with us. And I also would like to seize the opportunity and to send the warmest and the most sincere greetings to the Adala Center, the lawyers, the brave lawyers who did a lot to us. And to be honest, without them, we were not able really to overcome those tough moments in the prison. But yes, Huwaida, I fully agree with you that it was conviction, but also training, but also the solidarity that we showed together. Huwaida insisted on something that I think very important, that to bring solidarity and to stay focused. She suggested the idea of humming, and it was very successful. When they intercepted us and when the soldiers were on board Hamdallah, we started humming, and we have chosen Bella Ciao. We started humming with Bella Ciao, the revolutionary song, and then with Unadikum. And Huwaida did her best to teach us. I know Unadikum, I helped her a bit with a Moroccan journalist, but she taught the rest of us and the comrades the rhythm and the rhyme of Unadikum. I think humming helped us a lot. But we did not only hum, but also Chris Smalls made his famous chants that later would become very famous chants of solidarity with Palestine in New York, but also Huwaida when she was arrested in front of the port and she was brought brutally. And Chris, all of us, we chanted "Free Palestine" with all of the conviction, but also because we were ready, because there were some experienced people like Huwaida, like Wiva, who trained us enough and who also showed us how to behave and how to show that we are strong. But I would like also to salute people because I didn't see any sign of cowardness or any sign of fear. We were all tough, we were all courageous, and with their arms, we knew very well that fear was in their eyes, not in ours. And that with the arms they bear, with all of the weapons they have, it was them who were frightened, not us, because we were full of convictions that Palestinian freedom will one day come true, and we will visit again Palestine when it is emancipated and freed. And I think we were successful, thanks to our convictions, but thanks to Huwaida and the teachings of the other comrades.
Too much, Hatem. We really did. Honestly, it was an honor to work with all of you and just to share my experience and to have that experience help make you all as powerful as you can be with your presence on that boat, because that action is part of it, but also what we do with it back home, how we build on it, and how we use it to continue to mobilize for Palestine. We know that the boats alone are not going to free Palestine. Maybe we'll end up breaking through the siege to get to Gaza like we did in 2008, but that it needs a lot more than that in the building that we continue to do so.
I would like to start off by saying it's brilliant and it's beautiful that we are able to take up space in this conversation, and we are able to really sew together all of the elements that actually crystallize into what solidarity is, because it is the outside world that is standing in solidarity with us. So this is where we would like to take this session, is that so today we stand in the face of disinformation, we stand in the face of colonization, and in many instances, actual occupation, brutal occupation across the world. We stand with our archives, with our stories. We stand with youth that are oppressed. We stand with, so there's this whole life world that has brought about this architecture of solidarity that you are a part of. And so there's a new radical imagination. There is global awareness. There are student movements, there are artists movements, there are medics and thinkers and photographers and people from all over the world. We are starting to build this architecture of solidarity that always existed, but today we are at a crescendo. Today we have reached a crescendo, and we ask you, and we ask together each other, what next?
And so we continue to do this. And now we're in, after the Madeleine sailed and the Global Samud Flotilla experience, we have a lot of different groups. For many years, since 2008, we were the Small Free Gaza movement. Then since 2010, we were the Freedom Flotilla Coalition up until 2025. Now we have all of these different groups that want to sail and that have sailed, that have done incredible work. And we are in a process actually of seeing how best to coordinate our efforts, because we want and we need the whole world to rise up, and as much as we can. Maybe not everything can be coordinated, but certainly when we're using the same tactic and as much as we can to try to be coordinated, we're actually in the process of working that out. From those who participated in the Global Samud, there was another organization that we sailed with called the 1,000 Madeleines, and they have groups in different countries now. And that is very powerful and empowering development that we want to encourage. But to be honest, we don't have it all worked out. Like, how do we best work together now? Do we merge and become all one group? Do we keep our separate groups and just coordinate? These are all discussions that we're having right now as we evolve. And it's always an evolving process. Yes, we have experience, But we are not some top-down, heavily funded, rigid organization. It flows. What happens because of people's commitment and love and dedication to what we are doing. And we make mistakes sometimes, and we learn from those mistakes. One of our, probably the most important thing on our mind always is people's safety, because we are doing something that is not safe, and that is in the hands of another very violent, belligerent, unaccountable power, which is the Israeli military and government. And so we know that. We know what they have done, what they have the capacity to do, and that we're going to confront that. And that can be very dangerous. And we've lost colleagues doing that, but not wanting to give into that brutality, but still mobilizing to confront it requires us to constantly think about what we can do to best protect people, or to try to increase people's safety in an environment where we can't ensure anybody's safety. And so that's why we insist on training, why we vet people, why we are concerned with having media and a lot of other things that we can do, the solidarity, the knowledge of people around the world, in terms of what we were doing and following us and being involved, all in the hopes that this can increase the safety of the mission, increase pressure on Israel, increase focus on Gaza. These are some of the things that we're always thinking about as we're mobilizing.
That's why I said Palestine and October the 7th and the Solidarity Movement has been changing the world and awareness. People from different backgrounds, political or cultural or social backgrounds, are together now to organize. I was in Tunis for all the period of Sumud Flotilla, and I helped with organization, and I helped with training, and I've seen hundreds of people in Tunis, and I am proud that Tunis hosted Sumud Flotilla with all of its problems, with all of its issues. I think it was another moment of pride in Tunisia, but I think organization is of paramount importance, training is of paramount importance, but also the discussion, paying attention to every single detail. And I finish with remembering Huwaida and Tan when they were in the training. It was as if serious when we say, come on, it's drills. And when we sailed off with the drills and with the drilling and with the exercises, we took it seriously, because we really discovered later when we were intercepted that all of the training was worthwhile, and it helped us a lot really to know how to deal with the Israeli soldiers, because they are savage, they are barbarian, and they are very tough, but they try to use what I would call cinema to show that they are humane, and that they brought some sandwiches and water. Fortunately, we had someone with the experience and expertise of Huwaida who refused to take from them food, and we said we don't take food from the soldiers and from the army who is killing the children in Gaza. And we declared the hunger strike from that very moment, and it was really an agreement that we start our hunger strike. So it was an incredible moment, but I think now we should draw lessons of organization, of how to organize ourselves. And I think, unfortunately, with the continuous genocide, though there was a ceasefire, now Israel is bombarding Gaza. Yesterday, they bombarded Beirut and they assassinated a Lebanese leader. They continue to attack Israel, and I think the genocide and colonization is continuous. Hence, Palestine still needs us, and we should be ready for more initiatives, for more readiness to sacrifice and to give more to Palestine and Palestinians, with more organization, but also to be humble. Because, to be honest, and I don't know if this is in this part or not, I don't like a lot the egos that really cover all of the news, because the slogan we have chosen in Handala, all eyes on Handala, but all eyes on Gaza, because we are doing all of this not for us, not to become the heroes, but to bring attention, to draw attention to the genocide and to the suffering of Palestinian people.
This feeling is a feeling we feel in this region, and especially as youth, I feel everything that you are saying. I feel like we are this ship, and we do see a shift taking place, but sometimes it's the voice of an outsider that reminds you that that there is an otherwise, and that there are moments in time where a break happens, a break in the constant flow. There's a break, and there is a moment in time where a siege is broken, and this moment in time. Huwaida, would you like to say something?
No to the genocide and to the horror that we're witnessing, but also a collective embodied yes, to the world that we all want to inhabit. So work in progress. But yeah, it was the duality. It was the grief and the love in one space, in all of these fragile, vulnerable, contradictory, profoundly beautiful human bodies sailing together.
And that's when we realized we were actually stronger than they were. Here we were defenseless, unarmed, in prison cells, singing, and they had their full combat gear, their machine guns, their riot shields, fear in their eyes, not knowing what to do in the face of such rebellion. And it was a great feeling. We knew, despite all that they were doing, we were stronger than they. I can see a shift taking place. I'm sure it wasn't just our actions, but I believe we contributed to the changing tide in world opinion. Israel has never been as much of a pariah state as it is now. Western hypocrisy and the culpability of Western leaders in this genocide has been completely unmasked. The genie is out of the bottle, and they will never again be able to hide behind that veneer of civility. This is different, never again. They're exposed for the murderers that they are. I would certainly do it again. But given how many others have said they want to join, I would probably let the others have a go first. The tyrants have copied from each other's playbook. They've reinforced one another. They've shared intelligence. We've not so far built on our collective strength. And I think that is exactly what's happening now through this podcast and through the conversations we've had on the coalition. That is what we resolved to do. That's already happening. And what we're doing now is part of that process. They have bombs, they have money, they have shamelessness. We have strength in numbers, strength in our resolve, and strength in knowing that we're on the right side of history. It is time for us to channel our creativity, our courage, and our networks to outmaneuver them and make repression much too expensive to maintain. There was a tremendous sense of solidarity in the conference. The fact that we helped in the kitchen, cleaned toilets, shared in drone watch, shared resources, it helped us bond. Of course, there were difficult moments, there were misunderstandings, but we became family as we went along. We didn't all speak the same language, but it didn't matter. We knew we were not alone, and this large extended family. While it might not have been much in material terms, the fact that us and fishermen had the chance to fish because we'd kept the IDF so occupied gave us such a warm feeling. Quite apart from what fresh fish meant facing famine, it also showed the cracks that were beginning to show. They were stretched, and the more pressure we would pile up, the more straight they would be. We were not going to achieve a massive victory on any one front, but we were chipping away. And with the tide turning, the dam would surely burst at some point. I see what I call the majority world to be gathering our strength, mobilizing ourselves. And this may well be a long fight, but it is a fight we'll win.
Yes, and we thank you for your powerful words. And we decided to look at the flotilla when we are thinking of Palestinian solidarity today, because we saw it as a microcosm of the way that international solidarity looks today, as a case study and a departure point where it's small events started in 2004 when there were 44 participants, only 2 or 3 are Palestinian. And then
2008.
on this flotilla, sorry, 2008. And then on this flotilla, there's unprecedented leadership of people from the global south, of Palestinian people. We have an age range between 18 and 82. We have people from different countries with language barriers that maybe know half of the story, that needed even political education, that were propelled by an impulse. And this impulse for us is really a microcosm of the world today. The way that students are moving, the way that dock workers, syndicates, even strikes that are happening within corporations. We see a global solidarity movement that is unprecedented. We see youth that are moving. We see leadership from the global south. We see people who are taking risks that they can't afford to take. And this is precisely the solidarity today that we could have never imagined before. And this is precisely why we saw the flotilla as a sacred space that deserves archiving and interrogation, a space through which we can see solidarity that is global. And the departure point is Palestine. And it will always be Palestine for us at Taawon. And it has become Palestine as the global movement of our time. And you have played an umbilical role in this movement, one that جزء لا يتجزأ, one that cannot be segmented away from history. And we salute you. And it means a lot to us that you were here with us today.